Hey, it's John, and welcome to the interview. Today, I'm joined by Steve Kahan, who is a marketing strategist, a TEDx speaker, a startup guru, and a passionate businessman. He has helped grow startup companies from early stage development to going public or being sold, resulting in a total value of over $3 billion so far. He is a startup advocate who encourages young people who are just jumping into the job market to explore the world of startups rather than settling for that corporate job. He has a new book entitled Be a Startup Superstar. The book teaches those graduating college and young professionals how to earn a living doing what they love by igniting their career at a tech startup versus a corporation. You can grab a copy of his book over at beastartupsuperstar.com, and we'll link that below this video during the show notes here. And before we jump into the interview, I do want to let you know that this episode is sponsored by the $1 Billion Legacy Agency, where we work with business leaders to help them expand their thought leadership using online marketing and new media strategies. So, Steve, thanks for stopping by.
Great to be here.
Awesome. Let's just give the readers or the listeners rather. I don't think you can read these podcasts, and maybe you can transcribe them. Listeners, a little bit of your background, just to kind of get them caught up to who you are.
Sure. So I started, I guess, my career the way so many of your listeners started is, remember listening to my parents and my father in particular, who would say, Steve, get your degree, go to work for a large corporation, you work hard, they'll take care of you, and you will have a great career. And so then, of course, he would say, of course, your mother and I would much prefer that you become a doctor or a lawyer. But short of that, getting a job at a large corporation will do. So that was the path that I took. And I originally started at a large corporation processing claims. And I remember getting up, taking a look at my bank statement and seeing there was only $50 in my bank account, seeing how the student loans would grab a hold of my paychecks before they'd ever get a chance to hit my bank account. And so on one of those fateful days, I asked myself an important question, and that was, how could I earn a great living and love the work I do? And I made my way into startups from there. And as you mentioned, since that time, I've now been with 7 startups, 6 of which have had great exits. And my 7th, now a company called Thycotic, in 4 years, we have gone from roughly 9 million to 100 million in annual revenue. And that's sort of the trajectory of other companies that I've been with. And so I've been blessed to work with lots of great entrepreneurs along the way, and want to pay it forward now to sort of the next generation of entrepreneurs who will lead our businesses and country forward.
Yeah, we'll dive into your expertise around startups in a second, because that'll be an interesting discussion for sure. So were you always an entrepreneurial guy? Were you like selling eggs door to door as a kid, or like doing the baseball card thing, or like what was it like? Were you always that way, or is that something you developed courage for, or just kind of got sick of hearing your parents talk about corporate jobs maybe, or I don't know?
Yeah, I guess I was someone that you wouldn't pigeonhole into a small role. I always wanted to have an opportunity to learn new things, to be working on cool, exciting areas, working with innovative, smart, talented people. And so for me, it's, maybe it's a little bit of the rule busting rebel rouser,
Yeah.
but also at the same time, not someone who's taken a great deal of risks, but have taken calculated risks, all within the startup community. So for me, it's kind of not being stuck into a role, but having the opportunity to wear many hats. That really excites me a lot.
So you're one of those people, you probably hate managing stuff, but you love starting stuff quick. Are you a quick start type personality?
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
love starting things.
Yeah.
I relish change and opportunity. But at the same time, I also have the persistence and tenacity to see things through. It doesn't need to be constant change and constant new. It's really about building something great and working with people who are aligned in that very same vision
Yeah.
to make that happen.
Very good. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the startup stuff, and then let's get back to you and kind of how your day looks in a moment. But when people hear startups, they think risk. They think like, wow, this is going to be scary. And if you were to tell your loving parents who are looking out for you, you'd rather do that over getting a job as a lawyer, a doctor, manager at an organization or whatever that is. They might be queasy a little bit, but is the startup stuff, I mean, you're encouraging young people to look at this. Is this something that everybody should do, or should they take a personality test first, or what does that look like for people?
No, I really don't think so. I think it sort of starts out with sort of a little bit of how you envision your career, right? And so, first and foremost is if you want to get into the C-suite, and that is something where you want to go. And let's say you choose the Fortune 500 route. Well, obviously, there can only be 500 CEOs and maybe 5,000 in the C-suite all told. And many of those people stay in those jobs for years. So that means that your odds of getting in the C-suite in the Fortune 500 is probably about the same as your odds of being drafted into the National Football League,
Right.
where 254 players are selected in each year's NFL draft. So compare that to the 46,000 startups in the United States alone, and you could obviously see there are far more executive leadership opportunities. I think the real key is how you separate a startup that has a good story versus a startup that has both a good story as well as a good chance for success. Many startups fail, but I've been blessed to have not been a part of any of those. And it really
Wow.
comes down to what I've learned is how you select the criteria by which you select the right startup.
And that was the next question is, what do you look at when you're selecting an opportunity so that I mean, there's always, a chance of failure, but to minimize that chance.
Right, right, right. It's a great question. And so this is what I've learned. So the first thing is that I look for quality people who share the same values, right? And so if you're going to be working typically with a smaller team of people and you'll be working very closely. And so you want to make sure that the people that you're working with share, in many ways, the same values as you do. And if they don't, immediately move on. You're looking for leaders that will rock your world. So that's one. Secondly, I look for a concept that fills a big market need.
Hmm.
And there, what I look at is two criteria is that buyers don't spend money on nice to solve challenges. They spend money most often on must solve challenges. So there's lots of research you could do to read what the analysts and influencers say about a market to make sure that it's big enough. And by the way, don't be afraid if you see that there's some big boy competition out there. Be afraid actually if you see that there's no
Right.
competition because it would suggest that maybe there's not a market. The next criteria that I look at is the product itself, whether it's a product or service, and it's one that you could feel proud representing, that it's something that you would actually buy if you sat into the same shoes as the buyers that you would be selling to. And finally, I look for if that startup has proper capitalization and enough runway, because you want to make sure that you have enough of a chance to actually get that startup off the ground where you can achieve both growth and stability.
Hmm.
So it's really those criteria that I look very, very closely at prior to selecting a startup. And really every single of those criteria must be checked, and if they are, odds are you've put yourself into a situation that could be really special.
So the first thing is the people, right? Making sure you can vibe. That's always, you don't want to get into business with people that makes you miserable, or they're just not good people, obviously. And then the funding, the capitalization, as you mentioned, to give it some runway and to help pay things and give it a chance. And then beyond that, as far as the product itself, do you look for a product? I mean, it's a startup, right? I mean, is it like pre-sale? Is it like, I mean, do you have like any benchmarks as far as like where the product's at or how much it's been sold or tested?
Well, so it depends where you are just in terms, first and foremost, just in terms of your own career, right? And so what you'll find is usually when it is a pre-product or the product really hasn't proved viability yet, is that you'll often find that those opportunities are few and far between, and those are the ones that are probably too risky. It's in those startups that perhaps a founder is hiring people that they already know and just a few of them. But then that next stage of startup where they've proven viability, where they actually have a handful of customers underneath their umbrella, where you know that the product works as advertised, and then there's so much work to do, but it's really about scaling the business. It's within those opportunities where I would encourage your listeners to focus in on, because those are
Yeah.
not only far less risky, but quite frankly, you're able to then concentrate on focusing on growing a business rather than just seeing if one can be stood up.
So instead of being in the idea phase, they're more in the startup phase, because there's like a phase almost before the startup, which is this idea even good? Is it going to work? Are people actually going to buy this kind of thing? So,
Right,
which
and
can
I
obviously be very risky, right?
absolutely. And I've started up one company that had a good exit. And so, even in that particular situation, I actually look for ways to get to viability faster. So, the product that we brought to market, what I saw, I did a lot of research. It happened to be in cybersecurity. And at that time, there were too many alerts going to cybersecurity professionals and no way to aggregate them and actually manage what's coming in. And so rather than build that product from scratch, I saw that there were products that kind of did some of that stuff that could be changed and modified in ways in which it could ultimately deliver a great solution. And so myself, along with an investor, actually purchased that product from an existing company. And then we focused it in on a completely different business problem, new space. I had a couple of people with me. So even in that case, when it was right from the ground floor, we really looked for innovative ways to accelerate past the concept phase and zoom into the next growth phase. And it turned out well.
Okay. So you looked at another example or an analog of another product and modeled that, and you felt confident that that would work. So
Absolutely.
yeah. Do you have any benchmarks at all for like product viability? Like if they've sold a certain, or is it just kind of depending on the startup? Like you just want to make sure that they've sold a number of products, that they have customers that are getting results, that they have at least some of the processes in place before they can grow. Is that
Right.
kind
And
of
so
it?
one of the biggest things that I would encourage listeners to do to understand viability is that if you are going in that second stage, right? I mean, if you had the ability to do everything, you would talk to analysts, analysts like Gartner Group, or there are others that might be able to talk to the viability of a product area. But also, what I like to do is I like to talk to customers.
Yep.
So I'll ask to talk to real paying customers if you can, because they'll give you insights. They'll be able to tell you, did the product do as it was advertised to do? And don't be concerned if not every piece is in place. So, for example, a lot of times when a company starts, the products might not scale appropriately to meet the needs of an entire, for example, global enterprise. That's okay, it could get there. But what you want to make sure is that it is solving the business problems for which it is intended, and real customers that are paying customers, not just customers that are non-paying customers that might be just friends of the firm, give you a great way to sort of test out that viability.
Yeah, no, I love that. Getting on the phone with real customers. It's so doing what's not scalable, right? Like is huge in the beginning. I remember reading an article, I think Y Combinator put it out, of Airbnb. They used to knock on doors and like try to like get people to sign up, or Stripe, the payment processor, was manually and putting people into their system on their own computers as they would pitch it to them. It's getting into conversations, like you say, is is huge for any kind of endeavor, right?
Right.
We don't talk to people enough, right?
We
Like
really don't.
we hide
And
behind our ideas,
we really do.
Yeah.
And so really what you're talking about here are customers, but then there could be even other ways that get you close. So find out who's supporting the product, and talk to those people, right? So
Mm,
they're the ones on the front lines dealing with the problems. So for example, if you find out that implementation or installation is like really hard as an example, that's a flag for sure.
mm, mhm. Okay. So you would recommend the type of startup to look for. It would be someone who's past the initial ideation phase. They're into a place where they've sold some product. They have some happy customers you can speak to, and they have at least some initial systems in place to look to grow. And that's where you want to kind of get in with.
Absolutely.
Okay. Very cool. So how do you find these? Like, let's say I'm somebody who's looking to partner with one of these companies. I want to help them with marketing or whatever your skill set is. Where's a good place to look to like find these kind of startups we just described?
So first I'm going to say where you will not find them.
Okay, good.
I'll tell you a couple of ways to go about finding them. So let's say that you're still in college, for example, right? Those startup companies are never going to come to a recruiting day, right? Those are only the big companies. The startups can't afford to be there, so you will never find them there.
Okay.
So let me tell you some places that you will find startups, really, no matter where you're at within your career. So one of the unknown and overlooked places to find startups are underneath technology accelerators, or just accelerators of any kinds of business. And so what you'll find is if you Google the word accelerator in a particular city anywhere, you will find that there are accelerators. These are organizations that provide seed capital to the portfolio companies within their particular area. And those companies are on those accelerators' websites, and very often they are posting jobs that are available right from those accelerators websites. And unfortunately, very few people actually look at those sites,
Mm,
so they're hidden, right? So you're not going to find those necessarily posted in the traditional ways.
okay.
A second way to find great opportunities that is underutilized and just overlooked is to take a look, research the startups in a particular industry or in a particular area, and take a look at their exec team and follow some of their executives and what they're saying online. I've had a number of people over the years who have reached out to me personally, or I have with other executives as I was rising through the ranks in my career. And the key is you could do this via LinkedIn Messenger as an example. And so long as it is a sincere, heartfelt, non-salesy type of approach, don't be dissuaded if you don't get everybody to respond to you, because these people are busy. But oftentimes, if you're able to communicate directly with the executives at the organizations, and then you have the ability, and people want to, like me, because they want to pay it forward. They realize that they didn't get to where they are. I certainly didn't without the help of others. And in those conversations, again, if it's sincere and heartfelt, it gives you the opportunity to then transition the conversation to you, where that executive can learn about you, and you're sort of wanting to learn how you can move your career forward in a similar trajectory. And then that, boom, all of a sudden you've opened it up, and startups are desperate for hiring. And even if it's not at that company, there may be people within that executive's uh, inner circle or network
Yeah.
that you might be able to find some great opportunities.
Okay.
Two ways to find maybe unposted jobs.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Is it best to target the CEO then of these companies? Are they the ultimate decision maker, or anybody in the C-suite for that company, or who's the best person to go after? I guess maybe it's depending on whether
So
you're
I
in
think it
marketing or not.
depends on the functional area. So let's say it's marketing, you'd come
Hmm.
after or me, for example, or if you see the person who's leading support or R&D or finance, right? So I probably wouldn't go after the CEO, right? I'm maybe, right? But that person might be even harder. I'd probably go after the leader of a functional area and start there.
At the C level, though, right?
At the C
Yeah.
level, absolutely. And those people are almost invariably posted right on the websites, or you could Google, uh,
Yeah.
say the head of R&D at whatever company that you're interested in, and it comes up right at the top.
Okay. Is there, what kind of like, I guess, okay, well, let's say someone is in marketing and they want to hook up with one of these startups that we described today, and they find them on LinkedIn, or they find them, through these accelerator sites that you mentioned, and they reach out and they have a discussion, and they agree to, there's a discussion on the specifics of working together. So what does that look like? I mean, obviously you want the startup to be well funded. I mean, is it common for them to pay like a salary or a percentage, or like what does the situation look like from that angle for somebody?
So first, I'd like to respond. I think that's a two-part question. So I'm going
Sure.
to start with the first one, which is, what are the questions that you can ask to best determine the startup's potential? Right. And so let me offer some to your listeners. And this is like going to a 301 level class. So if you have a pen out, now's the time to take some notes. So here's the questions I would ask. First, why is now the time for your company to exist?
Mm.
Second, what milestones has your company achieved? Another one, what do you love about your team and why are you the ones to solve this problem? Next, tell me about a paying customer, about that journey, what are the revenue expectations over the course of the next year? Next, how much has the company raised and what is its runway? Getting very specific. Who are your investors and why did you choose them? And this is a bonus one right here because it gets at the values that I said were so important. If you weren't building a startup, what would you be doing?
Mm.
If you ask all those questions, not only will you have an amazing understanding of the business in ways that you perhaps didn't before, but you will immediately differentiate yourself because you'll be asking smarter questions than anybody else who's going after the same job.
Boy, I'm glad I got this recording. Thanks for sharing that, Steve. That's great stuff. So I'll have to go back and write these down myself too. But anybody listening, yeah, watch this again, take notes on this again, because yeah, that all makes complete sense, and you can see how powerful that is, how that makes you look, and all those kind of things. So, all right, so let's say you've gone through that, they like you, and you guys are negotiating kind of the final, pointy end of the discussion on working together. What does that typically look like for that kind of working relationship?
So let me tell you one of the most important areas to focus in on. So let's say you've done your diligence and now you've checked all the boxes, right? And so this is one of the benefits of working at a startup, and that is the potential for stock options. So let me talk to that just for a moment. So what you will find in your career, if it is anything like mine, is that you will rise through the ranks, hopefully over the years, and you're going to start making more money. And then a funny thing happens, is that as you start making more money, you get married, you have kids, you buy a house, you go on vacations, you start spending as much money as you're making. And even the most diligent of saver still sort of struggles to get ahead as much as they would like. And that's kind of how life is. And so to create separation, what I found is that you can do that via stock options, particularly if you get in and you get in early. And so I've always tried to push for maximizing those right out of the gate. And it's really key because if the company, I've always been someone that, if you're investing in the stock market, you're betting on people and companies, in spite of all the research you could do, that you really might not know all that much about, really. And so I've always been someone that I want to bet on me, the team, and a company that I work for. And so with those stock options, and if you've chosen the right organization, and then if you're able to grow along with the company, you'll probably get more stock options. And then if you're fortunate enough for the company to have a good exit, right? Don't be thinking about the exit initially, right? That's the worst thing you could do. You want to think about building a great company. But if you focus in on those things to build a great company, get stock options, you set yourself up to create financial gain in your career that can really help make your life even better.
Right. Okay. So push for stock options up front, and what in exchange for a lower fee, or like, is it kind of a sliding scale, or do they pay like a fee plus stock options, or how does that usually
I
go?
don't think you necessarily you don't necessarily have to sacrifice on any front, quite frankly. And so it really depends the cash position of the company and whether or not the company sort of views that it would like to save money on cash and might be happier to give out stock options. Sometimes it's the other way around. But I think it's like anything else. It's a negotiation. You want to focus on maximizing really all fronts, which is your compensation, base and bonus, as well as stock options and benefits.
Okay. Very cool. I think that's pretty good on the startup stuff. I think we covered some really good stuff for everybody listening here today. So let's transition to you a little bit more, because you've had a lot of success doing this. This is your 7th startup that you're now been a part of, and man, it sounds like a lot of work and stuff like that for you. So how do you keep yourself, in shape at prime condition? Let's get into some of your personal habits and stuff that people can learn from you about.
So I'm going to give a tip on one of the biggest personal habits that I think could influence your success personally and professionally in your career, and actually something you can do right now. So for me, um, I am kind of a workaholic, but yet at the same time, I make sure that I have plenty of time for myself and my family as well. And so the real question there is, how do you balance that, right? And so I'm not a big believer in the term work-life balance, because to me, it stresses me out, and because it suggests that there's a right answer and a wrong answer. And I heard a term called work-life harmony, which I like, because it really suggests that things ebb and flow. And so I'm someone that manages my life by my calendar. So if I see it's in my calendar, I know that this is something that I'm going to do. And so the real question that I would ask your listeners right now is the most important priority in the calendar them? Right? And so there's a way you could test this right now. So go ahead, open up your calendar, give you a second to do this, and see how many meetings you have scheduled with yourself.
Hmm.
And if you're like most people, I will bet you that there's like none or way too few. So let's talk about what that means. What that means is I'm someone who likes to work out. So if I'm going to work out, as an example, and I don't get up super early in the morning, which sometimes I'll do, then I've got to schedule it in, and I schedule it in. But I'll also plan time that if I want to be home, to make sure that I'm home to have dinners with my family or a kid's game, or I want to maybe have breakfast with family or something like that. Or maybe I want to just build time in for my own training, or to learn new things, or to think strategically. I build that time so that I don't have my time grabbed by someone that gets me perhaps in a soul-sucking meeting that I never really would benefit from, or doesn't necessarily help me or the company accelerate the achievement of goals. And so I think one of the biggest things that I do to ensure that I have the quality of life as I'm working so hard is to make sure that I put myself as the top priority in my calendar and manage it as such.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Making yourself the priority, your family the priority. A lot of people will put business first, right? What I need to get my meetings done and all that kind of thing, and yourself and your personal stuff second. So, really sounds like you're a very intentional person. You're very intentional with your time, right? You can always make
Yeah,
another dot.
I think it's intentional. It's just being proactive,
Yep.
and again, it's what is priority one. I mean, they could be priority one too, but you still can't sacrifice the other pieces, right? And so this is when people start giving up on their workouts, when they start missing things, and then all of a sudden they wake up one day and they're like, wow, I'm not happy, right? And so you could avoid all of that is basically my message.
Yeah, be organized, be intentional. I always like to say you can always make another dollar, you can't make another minute, right? So you want to have your discretionary time is very important.
Exactly.
So what are you a reader? Are you a big reader? Looks like you are from the bookshelf behind you there, but what's a good book that someone listening to this conversation could go and grab?
So I just read a great book that I would encourage everyone, which was Zero to One, which is a book written by Peter Thiel, and it's all about how to build companies that create new things. And it basically talks about how successful people can find value in unexpected places, and really how to think about business from a principle first perspective, written by one of the most successful venture capitalists the world has ever known.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's just a ton of gems in there, some just interesting stories as it relates to growing businesses, and I really enjoyed it a lot.
Very good. All right, we'll write that down. 0 to 1, Peter Thiel. All right, we got that one. Okay, cool. Well, as we wrap this up, like, what's next for you, Steve? Like, what do you see the second half of your life here? Like, what would you like to accomplish? What would you like to do? What kind of impact would you like to make moving forward?
So for me, I've recently written a new book called "Be a Startup Superstar," which was a lot of fun. And I've started to do a few TED Talks, as you mentioned. But also, I try and keep a broad range of other activities. So, for example, on the personal side, I just had my granddaughter who was born just 2 weeks ago today. And so that's grandchild number two, and making sure I've got plenty of time for them because it's like super awesome and cool in ways you can't possibly imagine. I'm an avid paddleboard person and really enjoy doing that in the bay in Galveston. But then I just started taking flight lessons. So I want to become a pilot and then continue to travel as I do each year with my wife. And then finally pay it forward to others that I might mentor or people that work for me so that I could help others move into the C-suite as quickly as possible.
Very cool. All right. Well, I appreciate you coming by. Any final words? Anything we should have talked about that we didn't, and then we can and make sure to let people know where they can find out more about you, and then we'll wrap this up.
So to me, I think the final words are that today's startups are desperate for hiring smart, motivated, hardworking people willing to share their talents in innovative workspaces that are buzzing with energy and
Mm,
opportunity. So if you want to earn a great living doing what you love for the right startup, you could be a godsend.
very good. And you can check out your website once again is beastartupsuperstar.com. That's the book. Yep.
Yes, it is.
All right. That's the book. So you can check out Steve's book over there. And we'll have all that stuff linked up in the show notes page of this podcast. And all right. So thank you so much for coming by, Steve. I hope you all enjoyed this discussion, and we will catch you on the next one. Take care, everybody.